My oath, how good to have everyone back in their normal spots. I think the first time in many months, but I'm glad. I'm glad you liked it, and so do we. Starting from Chris and going all the way through to Rita at the end of the night. Thank you so much for watching. There is an awful lot to get to tonight, including more carry on in Canberra today, but I'll tell you about what was not quite at the front of the news agenda, but is really going to affect your life. I'll get to that very shortly. Lots of issues to discuss, from the safety of the streets of Melbourne to the fight around net zero. Two of our best, two of our favourites, Matt Canavan, Nicholas Rees, they are here. And why is Bunnings in the news for apparently frightening children? Okay, it's not just the prices. We'll get to that very shortly. But first, something that you have not expected at the top of the agenda, but one that I think is a sign of where our country gets things right and wrong. Perfect example. The housing crisis. Now, without fail, every city, every town, large or small, has an issue where young people find it very difficult to invest in the market, and there is another reason why this is the case. Now, very few people ever want to talk about this, and certainly it is a giant tut-tut of an issue. It was something that came up during the federal election. Liberals had one idea and Labor stole it, but I want to talk about the number of people from somewhere else in the world that are buying up the properties here in Australia, that are bidding up against you, your kids and maybe your grandkids when it comes to trying to get a house in Australia. Well, first things first. Overseas buyers, according to this report inside the Age newspaper, coming from the Australian Taxation Office's Register of Foreign Ownership report, says overseas buyers bought 2,606 properties in Victoria, so one state alone. Almost 3,000 properties. This was compared to 1,700 a couple of years before in supposedly the red-hot post or just on the end of COVID market of 2021-22. A 50% increase over 2 years, according to the figures from the ATO's inaugural Register of Foreign Ownership report. They spent $2.25 billion on home and land in just one state in just 1 year. The buyers were from China, Japan, Singapore and Hong Kong, which of course is also China. They accounted for nearly half of all purchases by foreign investors, according to across Australia last year. China maintained its position as the largest source of foreign buyers, picking up more than 2,000 properties worth about $2 billion. Now again, the state picture versus the national picture. What an extraordinary amount of money that is currently being sucked up. And these are the people who have been bidding against our families for properties here in Australia. Now, the report also shows a longer-term picture, and that's worth explaining to you as well here, which is that the report also provides a long-term snapshot of foreign ownership, revealing overseas buyers bought more than 40,000 properties since 2016. 40,000 properties since 2016. Victoria, the largest share, 17,000. So in less than 10 years, 40,000 properties across the country, almost half in the state of Victoria. Now, thankfully, because Peter Dutton had this idea at the last election, which was to ban foreign investment, the federal government also put a pause on foreign investment until about mid-2027. But is it not reasonable to consider making it more permanent? These are the types of things that you would think that an opposition would be able to do to try to put pressure on a government, try to make the most of the adversarial numbers in the Parliament, in the Senate, to maybe move to turn the 2-year ban into a permanent one, argue for the permanent ban. And while I'm sure someone somewhere inside the Labor machine will say it's somehow racist, I don't think there would be many a person in Australia who wouldn't agree that Australians are the people who should be bidding for the property of Australia. Now, it doesn't matter whether you became a citizen last week or last generation. The reality is that that is a reasonable position to guarantee that the people who have put something into the country are the people that will be able to invest in the country. Otherwise, and it's very clever in people to note here that there's some seismic difference between China and Hong Kong. No, same country, same system, same people moving their money because they can't have it in China or in Hong Kong and trying to shove it here in Australia. Do you reckon any of this came up in conversation? By the way, of course, non-Chinese citizens cannot purchase land or even long-term leases It is only till 2027. You reckon this came up today in the conversations and the bootlicking between our Prime Minister and their Premier? Yeah, methinks not either. Another day, another terrible story about what has been taking place in Victoria when it comes to crime, knife crime, youth crime, you name it. Well, despite the fact that of recent times there has been crimes committed with a machete, the probably going to get re-elected Jacinta Allen is saying the machete ban is working. Again.
We know that the ban on machetes and the handing in of machetes is working, because just through the machete bins alone, we've had more than 5,000 of these dangerous weapons handed in.
Exactly. Let's go back to that headline, though, from The Guardian. Even the Turnbull Times, even the far-left, Labor-loving, Allen-loving, excuse-making Guardian says that Victoria's machete ban is working despite a brawl at a community sporting event. As you can see, sorry, I'm sending my team crazy behind the scenes. I apologise. All right, to the Sky News headline. Melburnians don't feel safe due to Allen government's laws being the weakest in the country, claims the opposition. Rather than showing you the headline, let's show you the people.
The Premier is saying Victorians are safe. There is a new report out that the Melbourne City Council are releasing to say 75% of Victorians don't feel safe in the city. 3 out of 5 don't feel safe at night time.
Our dear friend Nicholas Rees, a man who we do give the benefit of the doubt of, well, of course, it is a state government issue. He has responsibility. Why? Lord Mayor of Melbourne. He'll talk about what his plans are and how things actually change, or is it just a giant media beat-up? We'll have a chat to the Mayor in a moment or two's time. Parliament is back, which means, but still, Barnaby Joyce, well, he has returned to the Parliament, but not to the Nationals party room. No giant surprise that exactly what we told you was the case a week ago, exactly what we told you was the case 2 weeks ago, remains the case. Is that, yes, he's going to finish up as a member from New England, but this he's changing to One Nation tomorrow stuff was all a bit over the top. Barnaby gave a couple of interviews, including to my dear friend Laura Jays earlier today, in which he said that he's not going to become an independent. He's there as a national till the end of this term.
There's one thing I will rule out. I will not sit as an independent because I think that you've got to be in a party structure to have the numbers to get anything through.
Well, of course, he made the decision not to be in the Nationals party room today, although everyone knows what his opinion would be. But yet again, the Nationals party room was having a debate. Now, we've talked about this for weeks and weeks, where we know that most Nationals, certainly the members of the party, who of course help select the people who become the candidates, become the MPs, become the senators, well, you take your pick. Multiple states, the membership of the party has said no to net zero. But for some reason, the upper echelons of the parliamentary party debate this issue quite frequently, but they never actually take a vote to work out what the party's position is. Now, it's hard to believe that they can't come to a scenario where, all right, we've talked about this enough. We're in the paper every second week. What is our position? Show of hands, keep it, get rid of it. Yet for some reason, that does not happen. The debate, however, of course, does happen in the corridors, of which we are the beneficiaries of seeing.
The party room made a decision together that we would review the decision that was made in 2021 to support net zero. We'll go through a process now, and we're nearly completed in making sure that we review that decision, but that'll be a decision of the party room, not of an individual.
But interestingly, there is apparently some people that are trying to come up with some sort of a compromise solution. Here's the deal. You're either going to keep it, because that is you must be this environmentally conscious to ride the ride. That's closer to suburban outlets, suburban electorates, or you're going to get rid of it because it's your areas that are getting screwed over. This is the impossible choice that is made, not just of a coalition, but of a coalition that is as small in number as it currently is. So I am paying attention to the reverse ferreting that is going on inside this issue, and here might be a perfect example. Momentum is apparently, my word, building inside the coalition to water down the commitment to net zero emissions by 2050, with both Liberals and Nationals now actively canvassing approaches that would still reduce emissions, but at no extra cost to consumers. This would be what we could call potentially the half-pregnant position. Now, we've been told that if you don't believe in net zero, you don't believe in climate change, these are the rules that are set down by the government. We've also heard from plenty of people on the other side that to stick with this means that even though the goal might be 2050 or 2060, people deal with it as if it's a day before the deadline here in 2025, 26, 27, 28. You get the point. And have a full backbench meeting on Friday to thrash out the policy position. About 20 coalition MPs, mainly Liberals, who met on Monday, were presented with private sector polling that found 52% of voters supported watering down, not at any cost approach to net zero. Well, geez, I hope it's better than the people that were giving you the polling information during the federal election. I wouldn't mind seeing some of this polling because the Eternal Liberal Party polling had them winning the last election, remember? Meantime, Chris Bowen can smell something here, so he is trying to involve himself, offering literally to give the Liberal and National Party the advice that the government gets when it comes to climate change. This is a letter that apparently was written from Bowen to Susan Lee, and of course he's just there to help. If the Coalition's new approach is to listen to science and experts, then we'd be happy to assist in making the science and the experts available. Representatives of the Australian Climate Service have provided a briefing to Shadow Minister for Energy and Emissions, the Honourable Dan Tehan, on the National Climate Risk Assessment. This is the stuff that, remember, was Mad Max territory, according to the Sydney Morning Herald. The assessment, written by Australia's leading scientists, outlines how every Australian community is at risk from climate change. I would like to extend a briefing to you and anyone else in your party room who would like to understand what Australia has at stake. Remember, we're 1% of the world's climate problem, which means 1% of the world's weather problem. Even if we did everything the lefties want, guess what? It doesn't change what comes our way from China, India, Russia, the United States or the Third World. Oh, yeah, and how's about this for a little kick in the teeth? In addition, Chris Bowen is offering a briefing from the chair of the Climate Change Authority, Matt Keane, to be provided. Can I suggest that we actually do have that briefing, but it should happen on camera? Let's get Matt Keane walking into a coalition party room and delivering the message, and let's see how he responds to those who are as equally or potentially better informed, certainly about the issues in regional Australia, arguing back. That could be wall-to-wall TV. Imagine that, Matt Keane in the party room, cameras on, and we're going to watch the debate. I'd love to see it. Meantime, the issue of nuclear power is back again because this government believes that no one in the country thinks this is the option. Well, reality is I can show you poll after poll that show younger voters don't care as long as we get to something like net zero, and if that happens via this, great. It really is sort of, sadly, people in my generation of Gen X or older that are a little bit more fearful of the technology, but there's also a whole bunch of people who know the reality of this being the best way to get to net zero is probably the right way. But again, Chris Bowen, he says that small nuclear modular reactors, no, we shouldn't do them. Why? Because they require too many subsidies. I mean, his government is how many? $4 billion? And anyway, the opposition's position is now not to have taxpayer-funded ones, but just simply to remove the ban on nuclear power, which means private companies might be able to build it. And to give you an idea about how unusual discussions in favour of nuclear energy are, can I present you with 3 people who disagree on absolutely everything? 1, hardcore MAGA Republican. 1, establishment Democrat. 1, Democratic Socialist with a little bit more red rising. This was the New York City mayoral debate. And all 3, from all spectrums of the mainstream and a little further out when it comes to the most likely winner, Mendani, this is their response to, should we have more nuclear power in New York State? Answer, yes.
Any of you support new nuclear power plants to help bring down the rising cost of utilities in New York State? Just yes or no, Mr. Sliwa?
Upstate, they're already starting, yes.
Mr. Mondani?
I think it's something worth exploring.
Mr. Cuomo?
Is that a yes?
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Boom. I mean, in Australia, we don't even have a debate about whether to lift the restrictor plate off for then a private company to come in. And the government, ooh, scary, scary. Climate change, we must change everything because if we can fix 1% of the world's emissions, we'll be okay. This technology will help achieve that, but this technology not allowable, not okay. Why? Because, of course, there's many billions to be made in the technologies that have already been picked, right? And their preferred members in and around the federal parliament, state parliaments as well. All right. Now, again, the issue of building renewables remains a significant issue. It remains one, not because there's a whole bunch of knuckle draggers in the regions, but a whole bunch of people who go, I don't want this stuff near me. I don't want the sellout of this stuff. It is too big, too intrusive. You know, the protests that happen all over the country. But of course, not reasonable protests. These are not approved by the usual suspects on the left. Well, the Sydney Morning Herald is trying to put some further information, some evidence behind a previous story that they printed, this one back from the 29th of September. You may recall, I was somewhat surprised that now the people who oppose the forever changing of the landscapes by the building of not that forever technologies, mainly made in China, some by slave labour, were being threatened as potentially people that were going to cause violence. A submission to the Smart Energy Council, representing renewable companies, said disinformation in claims from opponents could escalate into violence against workers building the projects. Now remember, could is not will, not has, but could. Now just trying to get out there that everyone's standing in the way. Eventually these people are poisoning the locals and someone's going to cause some trouble. Multiple renewable companies report needing more security guards at community meetings. That's more security guards at community meetings, not more security guards where they're building this crap. Well, they back it up with another story, which is the proof to the claim made by the Climate Council. Because, of course, nothing and no overstatement of the Climate Council can ever be an overstatement. We're going to go back and backfill the claim, which is exactly what they did on the weekend. Same newspaper. Bullying, harassment, intimidation, shocking backlash for farming families who welcome renewables, you see? There's a good side and a bad side. The good side are the ones who want a wind farm on their property. The bad side are the neighbours who don't want them to build it. In a letter published by the Land newspaper, signed by 10 farmers across 3 states, so what's that, 3 point, okay. Queensland, New South Wales and Victoria, including one of the people featured in the article, claim that heated rhetoric from politicians opposed to renewable energy is fuelling anger and dividing communities. You see, again, it's not the projects. It's the good guys like Bowen or the bad guys like Canavan, you see? They claim that efforts are being made to bully and shame farming families who embrace renewables. Again, if anyone's responsible for that, what a disgrace. Interestingly, Barnaby Joyce, the territory of which he comes from here, guess who? Is held up as an example of the bad guy. Apparently this bloke has voted for the Nationals all his life. All his life, including the election this year, apparently, allegedly. But he can't see himself doing so again. It's certainly not for Barnaby Joyce should he run again under any political banner. Well, isn't that interesting? In May, this person quoted in the newspaper apparently voted for Barnaby Joyce to be returned. But if there was an election held in December, no, definitely not. Why? Because he still believes what he believed before the last election. Come on, come on. He's always campaigned for farmers' rights to do what they want in their land, unless it's renewables. Tonight, we're going to be speaking to farmers directly affected by this situation, directly affected by a ramshackle process where, whether you like it or not, somebody's rolling over your land before you even know that it is being changed. We'll have a chat to Anna Young and others a little bit later tonight. There is plenty to get to. Beautiful family there in beautiful New South Wales. Strength and love to them as they go through all of today. All right, let's go to Brisbane right now where, yeah, guess what? Breaking news, it was bloody hot. It won't surprise you if you lived it, but if you were outside, well, the situation there was pretty easy to see, which was that the weather was on its way, and the weather was on its way towards 38 degrees in parts of Queensland today. Now, this was after there was a storm which took place yesterday, and a lot of people have blown up about the lack of information they had about the incoming storm that was there yesterday. Why? Because of that new garbage website that has just been released by the Bureau of Meteorology. Now, put simply, the way it used to look is that if there was hail, you'd see it there as black, and then you'd have orange, and then you'd have, red, then orange, and then yellow to show you the intensity of stuff that was happening in your area. But no, there is a brand new website where, of course, you have to go and look for something, and they've redefined this and redefined that. And in the same way that, remember, they had to admit to some of the shavings, the roundings of historical temperatures in order to match the current climate agenda, or those were the questions they were asked. There's a new website that makes it harder to work out exactly where the most intense things will be when it comes to hail. Is that because they want to make everyone feel that hail is about to fall, because therefore everyone remains anxious about climate change? Who knows? Veteran meteorologist Anthony Cornelius earlier said that it begged belief that the Bureau would roll out such significant changes to a vital service just before the summer storm season. The decision to push live on a site on October 22 made no sense at all. It takes time for people to get used to a new site and learn where everything is. Absolutely correct. Cornelius said that mobile fan apps using the previous snaps did not work when they tried to use them on Sunday, which is perhaps why, again, this should have happened in the middle of winter, not on the coattails of summer. Murray Watt, the Environment Minister, this in part is his responsibility, his area. He was asked very aggressively, how much of this brand new stupid website that doesn't seem to do what the old one used to do, why did you need to change it in the first place? The Environment Minister, to whom the Bureau reports, was also contacted by the advertiser but refused to comment, refused to tell us about just how much money was or was not there in them there hills. Well, I can tell you what it was. It was $4 million. $4 million apparently is what they spent on the brand new website. Now, remember, this is the same organisation, the Bureau of Meteorology, the BOM, who did not want to be referred to as the BOM anymore. They wanted to be referred to as the Bureau. But, of course, Australians ignored it and they still kept calling it exactly what we've always called it, the BOM. Why change a website? I get it. Technology means things are better, but why don't you give people a little bit of a ramp up? Say, hey, in the next month we are changing. And even if they did say that, they didn't say it loud enough. They didn't say it loud enough for anyone to hear at all. Now, let's turn our attention to Optus and the show trial, which I think is going to be taking place there very, very soon. So, about Optus. We know that late last week there was a bunch of executives who decided to jump the company, so they will not be turning up at what has now been confirmed as a Senate inquiry into Optus, an opportunity for our federal politicians to start waving their fingers and blaming a private company as if they had any control over it whatsoever. Remember when they did this to Alan Joyce, who, yep, we weren't fans of, certainly his relationship with the Prime Minister. Remember those upgrades? Well, this, of course, was how he was treated by a bunch of politicians who technically, they just have no power over this bloke, but they have to sit there and carry on like American politicians, waving their fingers and trying to get attention.
Now, would you describe earning $125 million over 15 years, legacy terms and conditions? Or is it one rule for you and another for your workforce? The company is at its lowest ebb in the eyes of the Australian public under your leadership.
Still the most complained about entity to the ACCC in this country.
And it has to come to an end.
Oh, of course. Now it's good that they're sitting there and they're waving their fingers. But is there any such plan to do so, to try to work out why the Victorian government is failing? Remember, there's a scenario there where in Victoria Ambulance, the 000 system keeps breaking down before the last state election. The failures in that system led to 33 people dying. Any plans to pull any Victorian officials before a Senate inquiry to yell at them? Because their problems are way worse than anything Optus has had to do. Of course not. Tumbleweeds. Oh, we get hands off on the Labor mates. Hands off on the Labor mates. Cute little detail, though. Guess who is going to be forced to turn up to this thing? And that is our old mate and future Prime Minister. The person with so many tickets on herself that she can afford to bring other people to the many freebies that she attends each and every year. The Minister for Sport, the Minister for Communications. Well, she too will be appearing at the inquiry that is going to have senators presumably waving their fingers. Let's pay attention if any of the Labor figures that will be hooking into the company will be hooking in as hard to their own minister. Of course not. And therefore, any criticisms of the greatest minister of all time will, of course, be that of the opposition. And therefore, must be ignored by the wider Canberra gallery. Are you surprised? And as Parliament is back, you are, of course, working all day today to raise money for the tax department, your favourite charity. You'll probably do the same for Tuesday and maybe go even into Wednesday. And that's so people like this can be our overlords, show business for ugly people, where we pay for them to make social media videos like this one from a Labor senator.
My name's Charlotte Walker. I'm a senator and I'm 21 years old. This is your sign to drink water, to eat your vegetables, to get a good night's sleep, to slay, and most importantly, to follow me.
Again, I just love that these people, right? Now, the whole point at the end of that was please follow me, right? Eat your veggies. But they really do think of themselves as sort of educators, not just legislators, or in this case, influencers. Another couple of Labor MPs. Remember, you pay for this.
Sal Did you know major student debt relief is on its way, just a few weeks away?
So students are going to save, on average, $5,500.
Oh, and then there's our favourite mate. The lady who was bouncing around at the front of her own sign because she's a new MP in Queensland. What she got for us?